Treasury community. This is Joe Grabowski with Treasury Talent. In today's conversation, I'm joined by Brian Richardson. Brian's a former practitioner who entered the peer-to-peer networking space and is one of the co-founders of Lena, which is a private, invitation-only mastermind community of Treasury practitioners. Brian, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
I'm great, Joe. Thanks for having me. It's good to be with you today.
No, absolutely. Where in the world are you joining us from?
Well, I live in Little Rock, Arkansas. It's blistering hot here. We have heat advisory, which is normal for this time of year in this state. So you love Arkansas basically September through June. You put up with it in July and August. So
hey, it's living in Michigan. I think we were talking about it. I'll take one of those days. We have a heat advisory here too. It's only going to be 100, but these are the days that keep us warm throughout basically November through April. So Brian, we'll jump right into it. You've had a long and a successful career as both a practitioner that spanned across corporate and banking. What are some of the highlights that come to mind, or some things that you've learned along the way as a practitioner?
Well, first and foremost, any practitioners out there in the corporate space, being a customer is way better than being a banker. So yes, I've been on both sides, and it is very clear to me which one I prefer. Yeah, I don't, sorry for all the bankers who may be on the call or watch it later, but it's much better to be the customer. So that's my first lesson. If you ever want to entertain going into the banking business, you should think hard about that. Secondly, I've encountered a lot of new things in my career, and a lot of them were kind of scary to me, unfamiliar things and new responsibilities. And it's been amazing to me, though, how many of those new areas of responsibility that I've taken on that I really, once I got past the fire hose stage of that, it became really interesting to me. And the second thing I've learned is not to be afraid of and it's going to sound like I'm hypocritical, because I'm going to say later that one thing I've not done is jump around to different roles in a company. I like Treasury and I've stuck there, and that was partly out of fear. But things have come my way out of my control, and so I've taken them on and gotten through the fire hose phase and really grew to enjoy those. So don't be afraid when something unforeseen comes, a new responsibility.
That's perfect. And speaking as someone who's made a career out of sales, I can absolutely say it's better to be on the buyer side than the seller side always. So I agree with you there. And then if you don't mind, just a quick follow-up question, not to throw you a curveball, but how did you get over that fear as you went to take on new responsibilities? Because so many times I talk to practitioners who kind of come to me just asking questions around, should I do this? What's the benefit? Almost a paralysis by analysis type scenario. But how did that work for you, or how did you overcome that fear?
Well, partly it was, I really had no choice. It was like take it or leave. And so, I mean, one of my earliest examples was when I first got into Treasury. I had been in banking. I started with, I left banking and went to Baskin-Robbins. Started there as doing credit for their franchise financing program. So I was reviewing new applicants, for franchisees, and they went through a credit review process. That's what I did in banking. I did credit review there. And so I just applied that skill over to franchise financing. Shortly after I started at Baskin-Robbins, the assistant treasurer left the company. He was responsible for tax, treasury, and insurance. And his boss, who was my boss, or I think my boss's boss, came to me and said, "Hey, you've got a banking background. You want to take over the treasury responsibilities?" And, and I said, well, sure, I guess. So voila, I'm in Treasury. And, so I started learning about things like lockbox. What's a lockbox, and then not long after that, he came to me and said, "Hey, do you want to take on the insurance activities as well?" And I remember saying, well, I guess so, but I'll just tell you, my experience with insurance is my auto policy and my renter's policy. And that's all I know. And I really don't understand those. So I got into that, and oh my gosh, what he didn't tell me is we were 2 months away from renewal. And yeah, so all of a sudden, he tells everybody that I'm the guy. and I'm getting emails from people, with words I had no idea what they meant, and wanting things that I had no idea what it was or where to find it. And it was overwhelming. But by the time a year later, I enjoyed that activity. I thought it was fascinating, and I really enjoyed the people that I worked with, around the insurance activities of Baskin-Robbins.
That makes sense. That makes sense. It sounds like it was very much a necessity breeds creativity type scenario, and it sounds like you were able to float when it comes to sink or swim. So that's outstanding.
Yeah.
What's the one piece of advice for the people watching or who will watch in the future that now you wish you knew when you started?
Well, that's yeah. So it's kind of related to what I've said. Nobody goes to school planning to go into treasury. It's just not out there. You just kind of land there somehow. And my experience has been, and this was true of me, and I know a lot of people that it's true of, but once you get into treasury, it's just such an interesting area. You touch so many parts of the organization that you just love it, and you don't ever want to leave it. And I've got a friend, David O'Brien, longtime practitioner. He once described himself as a treasury junkie. And I get that, that's the way I was. I love treasury, and especially the operational components, which a lot of people don't like that. But I just like taking messy things and making them better. And so but what I realized kind of later in my treasury career, there were a lot of people that I worked with who bounced around to different roles. And, and I just kind of found that scary, just to go into a whole different area of the company. And I was happy where I was, but looking back, I regret not doing that. And I'm kind of envious of those, who have done that, and they've done well in their careers because they've bounced around. One company I was at, they were labeled generalists versus the specialist, and I kind of decided I want to be a specialist, a treasury specialist. And I regret that. I wish I'd have broadened my scope of experience. So I would encourage people, if opportunities to change roles come up, try it out, try something new. I mean, things that interest me are just operations and procurement. I wish I'd spend some time in those areas.
Well, it's so interesting. It's so interesting that you say that too, just because it's ingrained in us from a very young age that you become a specialist in something, and that's how you make your money. That's where you make your career. That's where you do all that, and you shouldn't deviate from that course. But very much along the same lines of my career, it's you realize that as you go explore other areas of a business, or as you learn more about more outside of your own specialty, it actually makes you more effective as a practitioner or as a professional, just because you're able to see points of view from the other side, or you understand the greater picture instead of just your own little focused scope.
Yeah. I mean, case in point, I several years ago, I was running a meeting for a group of assistant treasurers, large companies. And one of the sessions was on how to get to the treasurer seat, right, from the AT spot. And we had a couple of panelists there, treasurers from big time companies. And so they were just talking about their own experience, how they got to the treasurer seat. And the message was, it was from moving around. They moved out to an operational role or somewhere else in finance, even FP&A or controllership or something. And so sitting in the room were a bunch of treasury devotees, and there were a lot of discouraged faces at the end of that session because they thought, I don't want to go out of my box here. I like where I'm at. And so it was really an interesting discussion and an interesting reaction from some of the members.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of ties into the mentality that people look at it as a career ladder, right? It's always got to be advancement. You're always pushing forward. You're always pushing higher.
Yeah.
When it really is like a career jungle gym at times. Sometimes you're swinging to make a lateral move. Sometimes it's a step back to take a step forward in a different department, whatever it may be. But I absolutely love the advice there. So thank you for sharing that. Obviously, this is what you're all about at Lena, but how have you approached networking throughout your career, and what advice would you give to our audience in regard to networking?
Well, I'll tell you, it's invaluable. And, for me, it was Well, I just say do it, be deliberate about it, reach out and seek that out. But for me, it just sort of happened. It like a lot of things in my life, it just found me. It started when I was at Baskin Robbins and I got into this treasury world there, and didn't know what I was doing, didn't know what stuff was. And somebody there said, there's this organization, and this was in Los Angeles, Southern California. And someone said, there's this organization out there. And I don't remember the name of it, but it was like the Treasury Management Association of Los Angeles or Southern California or something. And they have these monthly lunches, and you should check that out. And so I decided to go and do that. And it was really an eye opener, wow, there's all these people here that kind of do what I do. There were a lot of bankers there too, that were, oh, Baskin Robbins is a new member here. Let's kind of crowd around him, But they did something really cool that I will always remember. They assigned a mentor to me. And my mentor, and I'll never forget her name was Sharon Drabeck. She was the cash manager at Warner Brothers. Sharon, if you're on or happen to see this, hi, and thanks for all you did in my early journey. But I remember going to my very first meeting there, and she came up and introduced herself and said, I've been assigned as your mentor. I think she emailed me ahead of time. And she was just fantastic and walking me around, introducing me to people. She checked in with me like weeks later, just to see how I was doing. And I could call her about things that I was working on that, I needed some clarification on. And, hey, tell me what a lockbox is. And so it was just fantastic. And then later, I moved from there to Kinko's, and I think while I was at Kinko's, I discovered the AFP, the Association for Financial Professionals. Got involved there and went to their conferences, found out they had a retail forum. So I went to that and, met people, kind of narrowing things down, to peers in the retail space. I remember meeting my counterpart at Starbucks, and that was really cool. And people saw us talking and thought, oh, what's going on? Starbucks and Kinko's, is there a deal brewing here? But it was just good to meet people in that space. And then later I was at Gap and got involved. Well, actually our treasurer got involved with a smaller peer group kind of organization. And she, being the brilliant treasurer that she is, and treasurer's on the call, listen up here. She got her staff involved with that organization, and their appropriate groups, and I was able to be a part of that, and that was, I remember going to my first one, and it was like 20 people in the room, people doing what I did, and it was just amazing. I mean, it was just, rather than a fire hose, it was an oasis of cool water, and just getting to know those folks who today, I mean, I'm still in touch with some of those folks. This was 2005, and I'm still in touch with a lot of those people, and some of them are my customers now. And so those relationships, they're old, they're deep, and they just continue to serve and bring value to both parties. I mean, they're value to me as a customer. I'm value to them because I provide a service to them. So it's just invaluable. And and having been through this for so long and been in so many places with banking and practitioner, and now what I do, there's just a lot of perspective I have on the networking environment and just the value that it brings to an individual.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful answer. I got to tell you that I know the question was about networking, but my recruiter brain immediately flipped into retention. As you were talking about, number one, having a mentor for what I'm going to term the TMALA, the Treasury Management Association of Los Angeles, if it still exists or if it's in existence. But having a mentor, especially in this environment where it is most employees are being onboarded remotely, if not in a hybrid setting, having someone who can help them navigate the organization, or they can go to with questions or anything like that, assigning a mentor, introducing that person ahead of time, it works wonders. And I know it was a networking group for you, or a Treasury Management Association at the time, but for those of you who are looking to hire or planning to hire in the future, talk to your HR about that. If you don't have that in place, definitely take a look at it, because you saw firsthand the impact that it had on Brian as he was getting his feet wet in a new organization. And the other piece was the treasurer at Gap you mentioned exposed you to the peer-to-peer networking group, which so many leaders you speak with, they're afraid to expose their team basically to the rest of the world because they're worried they're going to lose them. But obviously that had a pretty significant impact on you too. People want to be grown, they want to be developed, and you just provided two great answers. Sorry that I went off on my recruiter soapbox there for a minute, but you hit a couple of things close to home, especially this day and age.
Yeah, no, the mentorship. I mean, I've never had a mentor aside from the one, that I had mentioned. I've never had a mentor inside an organization, and I've never been a mentor to someone. My partner, Jerry Maroney, she recently had a mentor relationship with a young man. I'm not sure how it was established, but she was coaching him and developing him, young fella, and kind of guided him through an interview process with my former employer, Gap, and they hired him. And so we were kind of jumping around, dancing around that was a successful outcome for her work with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know for me personally, there's nothing more rewarding than the coaching and the mentorship aspect to it. It's something that I think I do well in. I don't know, we won't go down that route, but I think I leave a pretty decent legacy, and people tell me that. So it's just incredible. And I think a lot of people maybe want to be mentors or would be great mentors if they're tapped on the shoulder, but people are just afraid to ask at some point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll flip back to you. You made the change or the transition from practitioner and you moved over to the peer-to-peer networking space. What caused that change, and what skills did you develop as a practitioner that actually helped you in that new venture?
Well, I wish I could say it was some grand design, of strategy, but again, like so much in my life, it was just sort of it just sort of happened. I needed to relocate my family back to Little Rock. We had moved away, and there was a need to relocate them back to Little Rock. Little Rock is not a mecca for treasury opportunities, so so the notion of finding a comparable job in Little Rock was not very likely. And so I was kind of looking around for how to make this transition. And so the organization that I was involved with as a member was growing and needed somebody. And so I approached them, and they knew me and I knew them, and it just made sense. It was a pretty easy decision. And so they hired me. It was a virtual job. You could live wherever you wanted. And so that allowed me to take that job, start working from home. And this was 2007, and relocate my family back to Little Rock. So that was the catalyst. Now, in terms of the skill sets, obviously being a practitioner and taking a job where you're working with practitioners, hugely valuable to have that experience. You can speak the language, you know what they're talking about, and you can, at least for a while, make some contributions about your own experience. After 10 years or more, it starts getting a little stale, but some things are permanently applicable. But so it's good to have that experience and to draw on those lessons that you've learned and things like that. And so, but I have to stay up. Since I'm not doing it day to day, I kind of have to continue to educate myself of what's going on in the marketplace and, what our members are dealing with currently.
No, absolutely. And the two main pieces I took from that were, number one, you got the job because of your network and taking the initiative to actually network. So that's awesome. And then part two to that, you flipped over. It's not like you forgot everything treasury. You had that credibility. It helps you with members. It also helps you stay relevant from a group standpoint, because you understand what's going on in the industry. Yeah, you had to work a little bit harder, but when you're constantly speaking with treasury practitioners about what's going on in the industry, you know what to look for and what to research to provide assistance where you're able to. So as we mentioned, you did flip over to a well-known group in the treasury space. You did decide to venture out on your own with a couple of partners. What have you learned since taking that entrepreneurial leap? How has that ride been for you?
Well, it wasn't my first rodeo as an entrepreneur. I did something on my own back in 2000, I think, and which was totally out of left field. I mean, it was a franchise and a closet company. Like, it wasn't California Closets, but that's the most common one. And so I did something similar to California Closets, and it was a beautiful business. I actually really loved it, and it was very hard. It was, it was a hard thing to start that up from square one in a market that had, was not familiar with that sort of thing. And so, but it was successful. It was growing, and the hard part was just learning the business cycle for that service in that market, and it's very seasonal, I learned. So charts don't go up and to the right, they go whoa, 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 and had to learn that. And so, and that was a painful kind of experience, because it's great when you're in the upswing, it's scary when you're in the downswing. And so but that was useful, that prepared me for the second round of entrepreneurship, which was a lot easier because it was familiar. I was just doing the same thing that I'd been doing, just doing it on my own. And it was the first time I was an entrepreneur, I was all by myself. I didn't have a partner or anything. Second time I had two partners, and that was helpful, to share the burden, to to spread the work, and to be an encouragement to one another. And of course, we had a broader network between the three of us, and so that was useful. But the lessons learned is it's always harder than you ever expect it's going to be. No matter if you're doing something totally different or something very related or even the same, it's always harder. Things don't go as you kind of plot them out, and so just be prepared for that. And have contingency plans, have backup plans, have reserve cash. Don't expect that it's going to go as you planned. And so, and then the next thing is the other big lesson, and this is just so foundational for any entrepreneur, is you just do anything and everything in your power to make sure your customers are happy. And they are just prime, they are job one, focus one. Everything is all about what is their need and how can I meet it. And and you just go out of your way. You do things that don't generate any revenue, may even cost you a little bit, but if it makes a customer happy and makes them committed to your organization and your service, it's totally worth it. And we've had members refer people to us. I mentioned Jerry mentoring this young man. She didn't get anything for that other than just the satisfaction of helping someone out. And we're all about that. I mean, that's what our whole model is, helping people help each other. And so we bring together treasurers, assistant treasurers, treasury managers, to help them help each other. And and one of our internal mottos is, we work for you. And we do that. We recently we did our members come to us all the time. Hey, I'm researching this, I'm researching that. Can you help me with that? And so we just kind of drop what we're doing, introduce them to whoever makes sense, pull together some materials if that's appropriate. And so customer focus is absolutely fundamental.
Absolutely. And especially in the early stages, right? It's you kind of have to balance that. You can't please everyone, but at the same time, there's a way to delicately deliver a message they might not want to hear, and still be helpful in the process. So, and sorry, I'm going to go off record here for a minute, but when you had a budding closet empire, how did that transition back to treasury work? Like, what got you out of the closet space?
Well, I sold the business, and ended up taking a banking job selling treasury services, which different from being on the credit side. And it was a horrible experience. And so I did not stay long in that role. So.
Gotcha. I had to ask the question because that was one thing I didn't know about you. So let's flip it back to LeanUp. If I'm a treasury practitioner, you've mentioned it a couple of times in the value that LeanUp provides, but in your opinion, what are or I guess based on the conversations you and Jerry have had and the offering that you provide, what is the value that LeanUp's going to bring to me as a practitioner?
It's no matter what I say, it's hard for anybody. And I struggled with this even as a practitioner or even in my prior role. It's hard to get your head around it until you actually experience it. Because most people think, I know people, I I can get what I need from my own network or whatever. But the reality is they don't. I mean, yeah, they may know people, but most people just don't take the initiative to go reach out. So we bring together people that are working on the same things. You know, they've got the same responsibilities, and we are constantly making introductions. You know, our members say, "I'm working on something. Who do you know that I could talk to?" You know, and so even if they're not a member, we'll make introductions to non-members because that's someone that our member needs to talk to. Do it all the time. I mean, our model is to have sessions, whether they're in person, which they've not been in person, Zoom calls on topics that are relevant to our members. So they get that, they get our network where we can provide to them contacts that are needful for something that they're working on. And then, you know, we do our own networking, right? I mean, we have partners that we work with, you being one. You know, you've referred people to me, I've referred people to you. We do ad hoc stuff. Like last year, I was hearing from our members that insurance renewals were really horrible. So we partnered up with Marsh. We did a session on how to get through that process, pain with less pain, not painless, but less pain. We did something over the summer with Bloomberg on the whole LIBOR SOFR transition, which was really great. But the latest thing, we're really excited about this, and you're going to hear more about it this week. We're going to make a big announcement. But we're aligning with the AFP, the Association for Financial Professionals. And so we have formalized an alliance between our two organizations. And there's going to be a lot of benefits to our mutual customers, our respective customers, which are the goal is to make them mutual customers. So that's what it's all about. And, you know, we've been working on the press release, and that's going to come out today, tomorrow, or Friday. So I'm not sure when, but
right?
Yeah, really excited about that. But, you know, the bottom line is a lean up membership will come with an AFP membership. So, and all of the benefits that comes with. So we're really excited about that partnership.
Absolutely. And you should be proud of that, and congratulations on that, because that really is, it's remarkable. I know just when we were talking through it a little bit more, you know, there's obviously these partnerships aren't easy to form, and especially with larger organizations partnering with, I don't want to call you a small organization, but you're partnering with a larger organization. There's a lot that goes into that. So I'm sure you and Jerry have done a ton of work. I know that you've done a lot of work, and it's well deserved. So congratulations.
Well, thanks a bunch. Yeah, you know, you want to know what people benefit from with us. I spent the summer just spending 30 minutes on the phone with as many of our customers as I could get, you know. And so I had a lot of calls, and one of my questions was, how have we been doing? And the response, and also, do you plan to renew your membership? The response was overwhelming. It was so gratifying to have those conversations because, you know, just to hear your customers say, you guys are doing a great job, and yes, I plan to renew when it's time. It's just extremely rewarding. And to answer the second part of that question, if you don't want to hear from me, if you want to talk to any of our members, I'm happy to make an introduction, and you can hear it from somebody that, you know, is part of our organization.
No, absolutely. Anytime you can get that social buy-in too, and your customers are willing to provide references, I mean, that speaks for the product more so than you or I or Jerry could ever do justice, right?
Yeah.
Well, I know we didn't allow for questions during this because it is just the two of us, and I didn't have anyone to monitor, unfortunately. But if people did have follow-ups, would you mind just checking out the video on Simon's thread, or if people maybe wanted to reach out to you privately on LinkedIn or otherwise, are you comfortable with that, or how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I get solicitations, requests all the time.
Okay. Perfect. And if you are struggling to find Brian for whatever reason, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to connect the two of you. As Brian mentioned, we communicate quite a bit back and forth, and more than happy to be a conduit or a catalyst for that as well. So with that, Brian, I'm going to take you off the hot seat. Thank you very much for joining me, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Joe. It was my pleasure.